excited to meet one of the most handsome dudes I've ever met in my life. I blush every time I'm near him because you're just good looking dude, man.
I appreciate it.
So Cole, I want to make sure it's Cole Nienstedt, right?
Yep.
Yeah, Cole Nienstedt is you're an enterprise account executive at Idle Smart. And obviously you're also a gold member of Untap Your Sales Potential. I know I mentioned that in the description. And yeah, I'm just excited to for folks who don't know who you are, just to introduce you because I think you have a beautiful soul and you're just a good dude, man. Like you're positive, you have a growth mindset, and just really enjoyed meeting you. And part of the one of the reasons Ian hired me is just to showcase amazing members of our community, and and hopefully we all get to add value to and deliver value to the sales community and move us forward. So excited to have you on LinkedIn Live.
Yeah, excited to be here, man. Like I said before we got going, just always a good conversation with you. So you're one of the beautiful people here as well. So love talking to you.
Thank you. Oh, and for folks who are tuning in, so Unsap your sales potential is a community where we bring the brightest and the most ambitious like salespeople, mostly in SaaS, software as a service for people who are in that world together, and it's real people that have a growth mindset, and we help on routines, habits, discipline, and ultimately, how do you make the type of money you want to make without burning out in a sustainable way, and then focus on, what your values are, and just be able to live fulfilling, impactful lives. And yeah, Cole is one of the highest members in terms of, there's different tiers, which there's a self-paced learning, there's group coaching, and then Cole has the one-on-one coaching. So fully invested in himself and serving his clients. And today we'll be talking about kind of like how you were able to shift your mindset, and just why you even decided to invest in yourself. So we'll go through a bit more of your journey, and yeah, and it'll be conversational. And if anyone has any questions, feel free to post in the comments, and we'll field that whenever the time is right. But yeah, we'll eventually get to your questions if he's in the middle of something really juicy. So awesome. Well, yeah. So why don't you share, like, why did you decide to join the company, the organization that you're at right now? It seems like obviously climate change and is a big thing, and obviously in America, there's the freight and logistics companies are a huge part of what it feels like to be American, right? We're such a huge country, so would love to get your perspective on why this organization.
Yeah, well, kind of two pieces there, like you touched on. The climate impact aspect is something that I care about. Obviously, the freight and logistics industry is just, a huge industry with a lot of different opportunities and avenues that you can go to within it. At the end of the day, it was really the people that drew me here. So we're a small startup, 25 people or so. Before Idle Smart, I was at another startup based out of Kansas City. That's where I live. It was in the automotive space. And we had success there. We had a successful exit. I stayed on for another couple of years, and then it kind of got, super corporate. We sold to a larger, conglomerate in the automotive space. So I kind of wanted to come back and do it all again, really. There were like six people working at the company when I joined here. And we've grown it to what it is now. But yeah, disrupting the trucking industry, and we're having fun doing it.
Hmm. Yeah, it takes a special person to enjoy the startup life. It's not for everyone. Like to your point, some people do enjoy more of the corporate, or I don't know if enjoy is the right word, but some people prefer the the more, more established, a bit more structured, and but it sounds like you thrive on more of the being able to wear multiple hats sometimes, and I'm sure you do more than just sales, right? At your organization. I mean, that's just the nature of startup, right? Everyone kind of chips in the way they can, right?
Yeah, multiple hats. It wasn't too long ago when we had a lot less people working here that I was, sales, customer success, implementation, a little bit of everything. But it really, it helps you learn, about the industry that you're in, and helps you learn about the product. And I've even been involved in some of a bit of the development side of our product and our offering as well. Yeah, for me, I mean, it's just a lot more hands-on when you're at a small company, and that's what I like, as opposed to just a larger field, kind of like what you said. It's just, personal preference at the end of the day. But yeah, it's been great being here.
And I noticed you have really good energy. Would you say that's something that you've always had, or is that something you like continuously cultivate through just choosing and just surrounding yourself with the right people?
I think it's something I've definitely had to develop, and surrounding myself with the right people has been a big part of that. One of the things that I've been doing, ever since joining the program here is I have been meditating every morning for 5 minutes. I think previously my mindset was, just grind, 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 hustle. But what I found is it's not sustainable. When I was doing that, I was at the risk of burning out. I think I was coming close, but shifting my mind to, just kind of not the grind, grind, grind every day, but putting in a solid 8, 9, 10 hours a day and focusing on the right things has really shifted my attitude and my energy to where I'm not concerned that I left something on the table, or like I didn't do what I needed to do that day.
Hmm.
And that's just been a big help for me.
Yeah, that's a good point. It's almost like as salespeople, we're conditioned to like, oh, you have to grind. It's almost like some salespeople, it's a badge of honor. It's like, oh,
Hmm.
it's like I burnt out, and it's almost like I don't know, accepted is the right word, but it's almost like some people are proud of it, right? And I would argue most people probably don't think that it's possible to be a quote unquote top performer without putting in an insane amount of hours, right?
Yeah, that's exactly where I was at. I was proud of grinding. I was proud that I would, work 12-hour days. I would brag to friends at other companies about that. I thought it was super cool that I drank 6 coffees a day.
Hmm.
My coworkers would call me cold brew, like cold brew coffee, but cold, because of
Yeah.
coffees I drank, and I would advertise it. And I thought,
Hmm.
I was just addicted to the grind life. I thought that was the only way. But it's not sustainable. I was at risk of burning out, and that's around the time where I found the program, and that's where everything shifted mindset wise.
Hmm. That yeah, that's a catchy name. I'm gonna it's gonna be hard to forget. Do you do you get annoyed when people still call you that, or are you no longer cold
I'm
brew?
I'm still a big coffee guy. I'm down to one cold brew a day, so they'll still call me that, and that's fine. But yeah, the 6 was too much.
Yeah, it's like it's almost like shared misery, like salespeople. Like we all, every community, I'm sure if you talk to doctors, they talk about it's like, oh, that grind of studying for the MCATs, LSATs for lawyers, like the CPA or the CFA for financial advisors, right? It's almost like we all kind of have that like, hey, you get me, it's like yeah, like those sleepless nights and all-nighters or whatever. It's it's interesting how in sales it's like, oh man, like yeah, it wasn't that painful, like, becoming an EDR and like grinding and like I'm not discounting that it's easy to cold call, right? Like we all know sales is still hard, but it's almost like, hey, like there's another path out there. It doesn't have to be, like you said in your case, 12-hour days, right? Like if actually it's probably more sustainable long term to do a full 8 hours, and we're all humans, right? We're not robots, like we're not like, and obviously, with meditation breaks or stretching your legs and just other healthy practices. um, but so would you say you work 8 hours now?
Oh yeah. Yeah, I'm about 8 hours, maybe a busy day. It's like 9. But it's the content of like what I'm doing during those hours. Like there's no slacking off, if you will. It's definitely dedicated to either, advancing pipeline, generating new pipeline, or self-development. Which those activities change day to day on what they are. But
Hmm.
Yeah, it's 8 hours, and then when I'm not working, I'm shut off. I'm not thinking about work. That was another kind of struggle that I had. I would try to stop working, but all I would think about is like, what does this customer need from me? What is there something I should be doing that I'm not? But I've really
Yeah.
changed the mindset to when I'm not working, I'm not doing anything.
It almost seems foreign for most salespeople to the concept of not thinking about work outside of work. I'm sure if we were to poll that'll be a good LinkedIn poll next, but it poll the sales, hey, if you're in software sales, like how many of you still think about your deals or work outside of work? And I'm guaranteeing it's more than three-fourths of people would say yes to that, right?
Yeah. And I mean, I would wake up in the middle of the night sometimes and be like, "Oh, should I have said something else on that meeting? Is there something I should send, my customer, things like that." But yeah,
Mm.
the shift was hard for me, just getting to the point where I don't have to think about work anymore. It definitely, I had to reframe my mindset, retrain my brain to be able to do that. But once you get there, it's bliss.
Yeah, yeah. What you're saying reminds me, I'm very fortunate that Tanvir and Ian obviously like trust that I'm an adult. So even though I'm relatively new into this role as head of business development, I was able to take some time off to celebrate our anniversary in Paris with my wife, and then just got back from 5 days with
Mhm.
Tony Robbins. And most people would probably have a lot of anxiety, thinking like, "Oh my God, I shouldn't be taking off that many days." But to your point, like because I'm like, okay, let me implement the lessons of this, and it's like, okay, I know that I put my all, and I could take a week off, knowing that, I'm gonna be laser focused, and I've been laser focused, and I'm not perfect, right? But it does versus previous organizations, to your point, where I'm like in Disneyland, and then I'm like on phone calls with clients and my manager, like trying to work out deals, and it's like there was like no boundaries essentially, right?
hmm Yeah, and I bet those 4 days that you took off for Tony Robbins, I bet that was like life changing in its own regard.
Yeah, yeah, it was I was like F limiting beliefs, like it was just so cool to, yeah, it was very much a continuation. I mean, as you know, Tony, Ian took a lot of the lessons from Tony because he did that course called Unleash the Power from
Mhm.
Within, and just repurpose some of it in the context of software sales. So many of the visualization exercises that he did during the mastermind, and some of the exercises are have some Tony isms in it.
Yeah, yeah, that was great. I'm glad you got a lot out of it.
Yeah. So that's awesome that you're able to work on your mindset. Like, you mentioned that you were like burning out. Like, was there like a pivotal point, or was it just like, hey, like at this rate I'm gonna have so much gray hair, or I might die of a stroke? Like what specific, was there a moment that you were like, okay, I need to take action like now?
I don't think it was any like individual moment. I think the realization happened when, I was at a point where all I cared about was my number. That's like all, I would to the point where I was like, yeah, I'm single, so I would like message my parents though, like, hey, like I'm nervous about hitting my number this month or this quarter, or this year, whatever it was. And it just got to a point where I realized, this if I don't change the way, my habits on software sales, then I am going to burn out. I don't think it was one necessarily event or anything like that. It just got to the point where I was like, I have to do something because I'm not, enjoying my work anymore when I previously was.
Hmm. Yeah, I think what you're saying is very common, right? Like it's
Mhm.
I think Marcus Chan called it rookie energy, where he's
Mhm.
like during the so for folks who aren't in the community who don't know who Marcus Chan is, he's one of another LinkedIn top voice, right? Ian, Jamal, Reimer, Brandon Fluharty, right? Marcus Chan, these are four of the very top sales voices. And he did a mastermind in April for folks who weren't there. And he would often talk about like rookie energy, where like when you start any sales role, right? The first like 6 months you're excited, it's new, you're like, I'm learning a lot and like I'm pumped, I'm pounding the phones, and inevitably everyone eventually hits like a plateau and they're like, oh my God, like and then in comes all of the limiting, self-limiting beliefs where it's like, maybe I'm not cut out for this enterprise or strat like promotion, or, oh, my territory sucks, or like, oh, like, this competitor has way more product market fit, right? And then it just compounds, and then before we know it, we're just like, like, is sales the right career for me? Like, ha have you ever had that where you questioned like if this is the right path for you?
Yeah, absolutely. I had, multiple different limiting beliefs. Also just like, I guess kind of discounting my achievements was something that, I went through a lot. I would have all these like new logos that I brought on to our company. And I would kind of like discount those beliefs. I would, say things in my head like I just got lucky, or, anyone can do this. Um, but again, once you have the mindset shift, it's like, yeah, maybe anyone could do this. Anyone could do what it takes to, drive these new logos to our company. But not everyone does. So I think not discounting your achievements is a big part of, getting over those limiting beliefs for sure.
It it's interesting, right? Because from the outside, when people view us, like you definitely present yourself as a very confident, like like it just seems very natural for you. But in
Mhm.
reality, I'm sure every person, every human being probably has some element of, like you mentioned, doubting themselves, or just maybe shortchanging our accomplishments, right?
Yeah, and I mean there were other limiting beliefs as well. Just like, when I got promoted from mid-market to enterprise, it was like, am I really cut out for enterprise? Maybe the mid-market space was where I should be. And I think what helped there is just, again, realizing, the promotion was there because of the previous achievements, and because, our leadership team, our management, obviously I mean, they saw something in me. They believed I could do the job. And, it's kind of like a Tom Brady quote is, why would you expect anyone to believe in you if you don't believe in yourself? So it's just, detaching from those limiting beliefs, and just believing in yourself is the biggest thing that that I do now.
Yeah, that's a good reminder. I was just watching Tom Brady's interview on in Fortune magazine yesterday, like on my car ride back from like the Tony Robbins conference, and it was so inspiring because he would just say like he had so much adversity where like in college or in high school, like he was always like the backup to the backup, and he's like the seventh string quarterback, or like, and he's like, even though I crushed it in college, like for sure I'll get drafted in the NFL. Like I crushed it, right? And then, everyone knows this story now, but he's like was drafted super late. And yeah, it's just interesting to see like how important mindset is in sales, and just having a coach, right? Because ten athletes, tennis players, golf, like all these athletes have coaches, but it still seems like coaching is still relatively new or untapped in terms of enterprise AEs and a lot of sellers. Even though obviously that's a growing field, it does seem relatively untapped. So,
Yeah,
right.
I mean, and it's everything. I mean, coaching with Mike, and even just like having Ian there, and you, Tanvir and Christy is huge. I grew up playing hockey, and so if you think about the NHL and wanting to make it in hockey, I mean, those players, they have a strength coach, a skills coach, a stick handling coach. So when I knew that I wanted to bring on a sales coach, it was because like I've seen it in hockey. Like if you want to get better, you need someone to be there for you, to push you and develop you, and someone who's been there before. Like Mike, who has been at a super small company. He was there at the beginning with DocuSign. Um, so I was never really someone who was on the fence, hesitant about bringing on a coach, because I knew that that's the investment's going to pay dividends.
Hmm. Yeah, it's cool. People that have the athletic background certainly get it. I'm sure in some of the lessons and making it and being a really good hockey player, I'm sure definitely parlays to being a similar mentality and being successful in sales, right?
Yeah, for sure. Anything in life, really, it comes down to mindset and habits. And so a lot of my, drive and I guess competitive nature probably was from, trying to be a hockey player at an earlier stage in my life. But it's also, there's other things that you can take from that. Like, if you have a bad game, don't beat yourself up. And it translates to sales in that, things aren't always going to go your way every day in sales. It's a job full of rejection. But you can't, beat yourself up. You just got to focus on, in hockey, focus on the next game, in sales, focus on the next day, the next meeting, the next call.
Mm. Yeah, and one of the differences in hockey, obviously you have like a lot of like teammates, but especially maybe you're working for a small startup that doesn't have as many sales reps, right? So
Mhm.
it sounds like it's also helpful to learn from other reps and maybe take what you like about how they're doing it in certain or other organizations and bring it back to your process, right? If it makes sense, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, and since it is a smaller company, we're kind of limited here in, other reps that we have that have been successful. We certainly have them. Our head of sales now was, really who helped grow the company at the beginning. But like you said, I mean, the community with Untap Your Sales Potential, being able to connect with other reps that are going through the same thing and just kind of see what's working for them and maybe what works in a different vertical or industry and how I can translate that and articulate it to the trucking and logistics side of things certainly helps too.
That's a good question because what you do, obviously your niche and your industry is probably different and definitely a lot more niche than probably most of the other members. It sounds like you're still able to find value in having other perspectives that obviously aren't selling to the same industries still.
Absolutely. I think it's like even more valuable just because I'm able to take, things that, other people are doing in other verticals just and, in other tech sales environments. And I'm, when I'm like hearing what they're saying and trying to learn from them, I'm, relaying it back to, okay, how does this work in my space? How does this work in trucking? But I mean, there's also other guys in the program like, James Devine. He used to sell like in the telematics in the trucking space, and David DeCassis. He works for Freight Pop. Shout out Freight Pop. That's in the TMS space and logistics. So there's guys like that as well that kind of understand the industry and they're helpful too.
Ah, that's a good point. Yeah. It and is your industry still relatively new in terms of adopting technology, or do you feel like it's made significant strides since it sounds like you've been in it for quite some time now, right?
Well, yeah, on the trucking side of things, I mean, it's definitely old school. I had a call with Mike today and we were talking about that. On the sales side of things, when you think about like outbound prospecting, they're old school. There's not as much web presence, things like that. So that presents a challenge for me. But the industry as a whole is just kind of, I would say, a little bit slower to adopt technology, but it's rapidly changing. And so, like with our product, we're really just changing the status quo of trucking businesses. So,
Yeah.
I think that can be an advantage in its own right. It's something that these companies have never really like seen or tried before. So, you got to look at it that way.
I love how you're able to reframe what most people would consider a negative, which is, hey, it's an industry that's slow to adopt, versus like, hey, like for instance, like I've sold to a lot of tech companies and at Coach Hub, right? And it was easier because they get it. Like tech companies selling ed tech companies was pretty easy, right? Not too much of a learning curve. But I love how you were able to shift your mindset and be able to like, and you can feel it, right? Like what you said felt, it wasn't like forced, like it felt genuine as well.
Yeah. I think, other people that have, worked at our company and maybe not necessarily worked out, I think the problem is they weren't able to shift that mindset. They,
Mm,
it's like no one's ever done this in the trucking space before, so why would we expect this to work? And you've got to really just have that growth mindset, which, I try to embody every day and, think best case scenario instead of worst case scenario.
Hmm. Easier said than done, but it's great that you're implementing, right? Because there's a difference between learning, watching courses and then actually applying it, and you're actively applying it clearly, right? In what
Mhm.
you shared.
Yeah, and I think that's the biggest thing is just applying it. Because it was hard for me, to really get over that hump when you think about reframing your mindset. Because when you get rejected in sales, it goes back to those limiting beliefs that you have. Oh, maybe this product that we're working with, maybe it's not going to work, but it just goes back to thinking positively and applying that day in and day out. That's helped me more than anything.
And one of the most common questions we get for folks that are interested in learning more about Untap Your Sales Potential is, oh, it seems like you guys have most of your testimonials are at much larger organizations like the Salesforces, the Googles of the world. But clearly it sounds like for a smaller organization, it's still very much applicable, a lot of the frameworks and the methodologies and the lessons as well, right?
Absolutely. So when I did my call with Tanvir before I joined the program, just to get more information, that was the number one thing that I asked. I was like, I'm at a small company, like I see people here that are at Salesforce and Microsoft. Like, is this going to work for me? And what he said was, if you're working strategic deals, like it's applicable anyway. Any industry, any vertical, what you learn here is applicable. And he was spot on with that. Definitely everything that we learn applies. Whether you're at a big company or small company, again, like 25 people is the size of our company. It's the things I've learned have changed everything for me, and also just in the personal life too. We talk about mindset and habits, because that's where it all starts. And it's definitely affected me in my personal life too.
How so would you say?
I think I'm just a better version of myself than when I started. Kind of like you said, my energy is definitely, it's positive. I come off as confident. I don't think I, necessarily was always wired that way. I'm so detached from the things that I used to care about. I used to care about success and money and things like that. Where now I've transitioned to where I care about really, serving others. And I guess what I've learned, after that shift happened is that success, kind of comes from serving others. If you want to get what you want, help others get what they want, and I've realized that's definitely true.
It, it's in some ways easier said than done, right? I think a lot of people can conceptually understand, like, yeah, of course, like serve others, but most salespeople, and I've been guilty of it as well. I think everyone that has been in sales for a while, right, has been guilty of the managers breathing over your neck, and it's like, hey, you're at 89% of your number, like just one more deal, and you'll hit, it's like, oh, hey, I'm a little short on my forecast. Like, can you is this possible to move this up a month, right? And and it's sometimes it's like, all right, am I doing what's right for the customer? Am I doing what's best for, the spiffs that I have for the month, right? It's
Mhm.
that delicate balance.
Yeah, for sure. I would, like I said, small company, so you can't fly under the radar here. We would have meetings, and I would just, I would get irritated just if things weren't going my way, and then that would cause me to try to force things with customers. Maybe they weren't ready, or maybe they just needed more time to digest things, and I was just constantly hounding back to the grind, just
Mm.
following up with them, like, hey, are we doing this? Hey, are we doing this? Things like that. um Whereas now it's definitely, putting the customer first, and, their needs, and it pays back in the end, for sure. And then I think even in my personal life, when I think about serving others, even when I started coaching with Mike, I, told him that I really don't do a lot of, volunteer work or anything like that. And so that's something that he's definitely pushed me towards. Like my cousin is like a youth boxing coach in the inner city. So I helped him the other weekend, build a boxing ring and basically put together a boxing show. And it's something that like I never would have done, if I hadn't, changed the mindset of, be there to serve others. So it's been great.
Yeah, it's weird, right? It's almost counterintuitive. You would think like the more you give, the more you would quote unquote like not have energy, but it's like in the service is actually where you grow the most, right? It's almost weird because you would think, well, it's like, let's say I volunteer 10 hours a month, right? It's like, well, shouldn't I be spending that 10 hours doing other things that would be more productive? But it's like, no, like in serving, actually, that's when you get the most energy and the most joy and fulfillment and just more purpose, right? And at the end of the day, you just feel better about life and your impact, right?
Yeah, it gives you energy, like you said, and you just feel
Yeah.
so much happier that you made a difference, and that really does like translate into like your work life and how you interact with colleagues and how you interact with customers. Your energy is just so much better. So yeah, I can't say it enough how much that's impactful.
Yeah, it was interesting. I thought like I was volunteering for Tony Robbins and I mean it was a lot. It was like four 48 hours, like back to 4 days. And then we stayed the day before to prep for everything. So like 50, almost 60 hours. Yeah, actually, now I'm saying it out loud. It's like 60 something hours.
Yeah.
And I thought I would be like drained. I thought I'd be like, oh my God. But it was like the opposite. I was more tired being a participant. And then when I was just giving and like high-fiving thousands of people every day and just like hyping them up. And it was like just little things. But now I'm like, oh my God, like I just feel like even for me, I feel my energy shifted a lot, in just a week. So yeah, it's beautiful like what can happen once you like actually have a heart of service, right? Like people could definitely sense it, I feel like.
Yeah, for sure. And I bet that energy is going to, carry with you. It's going to stay with you for weeks and months. And, it just makes your life more enjoyable more than anything.
Yeah. Man, that's awesome, man. I mean, dude, kudos to you for applying it. Because I think too many people we the paradox of choice, right? There's so many coaches out there, there's so many programs out there. And I talked to at least like I mean the good thing about my job is I talk to at least like 100 people a week sometimes, and they're just like, oh yeah, I've been evaluating, and then it's like how long have you been evaluating? It's like, oh, been a year, and I was like, dude, just make a decision, even if it's not us, like do something, right? Because
Mhm.
sanity is just doing the same thing and expecting a different result, right? But it sounds like you clearly took action and you weren't like paralyzed by just overthinking it, right?
Yeah, I used to be an overthinker, but yeah, that's ironically something else that, being in the program has taught me is just, being able to turn fear into action because, what fear does is it causes us to procrastinate, like you said. And, when you can get over that, you take action, no matter which way you go, you're moving, you're not staying stagnant. And, complacency is, very risky. You don't want to be complacent too long. So, I'm always trying to move the needle forward and I resonate with that.
Yeah, and a totally random question, but I definitely have noticed a lot of folks that are were athletes that are getting into professional B2B and more specifically tech sales. What advice would you have to folks that are a bit earlier that are looking to make that transition, right? Maybe they just graduated from collegiate, they were a collegiate football player at OSU or, anything like that. Do you have any advice on how they can make that seamless transition or that transition more seamless?
Yeah, I think the transition is ideally, pretty seamless. You're used to having, a coach, be there for you. When you have questions, when you're trying to work on a new skill, and also just, be there to help your mindset, which is huge. And it's like you said, like coaching it's definitely becoming, more prevalent, especially in SaaS and B2B sales from what I can see. But If you still want to have that person to lean on and that extra help that you probably got in your sport, whether it was football or like baseball, you think if you probably had like a hitting coach or like a pitching coach or even in football, you have the head coach there, but then you also have like your quarterback coach if that's the position that you play or whatever it is.
Mm.
Your company is there, and management is there, to help you. And I feel like they're more so like kind of the head coach. But when you get into like a specialist coach that's, with you to develop your skill and kind of be there as someone to talk to, I think that's where, a sales coach comes in.
Yeah, I love that analogy. It just it's easier, right? When you have analogies, it's easier for people to relate, especially if this is new to them, which a lot of people it is. How would you describe Mike and Ian as a coach? Like, would you say Mike's like a strategy coach and Ian's like a mindset coach? Like, how would you, I hate to pigeonhole, but sometimes it is helpful to think of people in that way.
Yeah, I mean it's a good point, and I've never really thought about that, but it is there. Ian's definitely big, like on the mindset. And a lot of interaction I have with him is in the bigger group, so it's kind of is like he's like the head coach, and I'm with my team when we're on the weekly Wednesday group coaching calls. And
Huh.
then, you get a little bit more granular with Mike. It's talking about certain deals, talking about different ideas, changing up prospecting, things like that. So, he's kind of like a skills coach in that regard. But then, like Christy, I mean, she's helped me out a bunch too.
Yeah.
She helped me develop a weekly update email to send to my management at Friday at the end of every week, just an
Hmm.
update on what happened this week, what I'm working on next week, and where I need help. And like my management and leadership team love that. So it really is like a healthy mix of just different personalities and coaching styles that makes the
Yeah.
biggest difference, I think.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to frame it, right? And you can have multiple coaches, right? Even if you do a different program, whether you're in Jamal's enterprise sellers community or whether you hire Amber or Brandon, right? It's like I've had 4 or 5 coaches at the same time. Like I've had like Ian, I had like a business coach, like a book publishing coach, like a public speaking coach, and a podcast coach to help me execute, right? So it's like one of those things where sometimes people are still caught up with like, oh, I already have a coach. It's like okay, like at least be open. You never know what you don't know what you don't know, right? So I like your analogy because it really shows that like, hey, like if you really want to become the Michael Jordan and Tiger Woods of tech sales, like it probably makes sense to have multiple coaches, right? I'm sure Tiger had like a swinging coach, and then he had like a fitness coach and
Mhm.
calisthenics coach or like a nutritionist, right? Like people have so many different support systems, but some people are just so like, oh, I already have a coach, like I'm good, and it's like okay, just it doesn't hurt to have like a 15-minute call and just see what's up. But
Yeah, for sure. And going back to the original question, just advice on the transition, you've got to think back to, all those people that you leaned on, like when you are an athlete, like you said, nutritionist, strength coach, even like a mindset coach. Do that. You're doing that every day, like in sports, transition that to your everyday life, in your career. So it's huge.
cool, man. Well, thank you so much, Cole. I guess the last couple questions I have for you is it sounds like you're good at leveraging the power of community. Um, what are your thoughts on just like the caliber of people that you've met, whether it's through the weekly group calls or in person when we're hanging out in Lake Arrowhead, for instance?
Yeah, totally. And ironically, when we were at the mastermind, I think the very first thing we did on day one was we all went on a group hike. I was walking with Cesar Aguilar. He's out of Austin, Texas, and we kind of talked about, how we got into the program. And I was like, well, I wanted to surround myself with people better than me. And then, he stopped me. We both stopped walking, and he goes, no one here is any better than you. We're all equal.
Hmm.
So that's something that really resonated with me. Because I think initially, I wanted to join because, there are some high performing people in the group for sure. There are
Yeah.
some top sellers in SaaS. So uh,
Hmm.
it's it's you've got those personalities, you've got those very high achieving people that are there, but at the same time, everyone's equal. We're all there to help each other. We're all there to be there for someone if they are going through something in their professional or personal life. Everyone's just there to help each other. It's a great group of people.
Oh man, what you're saying definitely reminds me of just being honest here. I was hanging out with Nitin the other day because now I'm hosting monthly meetups with the community and folks
Mhm.
that are we're lucky that in New York that we have like a pretty good a group of folks. And I was just like I just had like imposter syndrome, like man, like everyone's so smart and so talented. And when I interviewed Kelsey afterwards, when we turned off the LinkedIn Live, she's like, dude, like I just love what you and Tanvir are doing with LinkedIn and how consistent you guys are. Like I really, really respect that, admire that. And I was just like, okay, like we all have things that we're good at and just embrace that instead of being paralyzed and just being focusing on like, oh, why I'm not good enough. It's like, hey, like what can I contribute and how can I add value ultimately, right? Instead of just being like, oh my God, man, Nathan's like so freaking smart and he's like younger.
Mhm.
Like, oh my God. It's like just changing, shifting it. It's like a slight shift but it makes a big difference. So thanks for sharing that because what you said reminds me of like, yeah, I'm not gonna lie, I do have imposter syndrome. It's like we got Tanvir on the team, like Ian and Mike, and it's just like, dude, like, how am I in the same sentence as them? But we all contribute in our own way. So
Yeah, everyone's super supportive. I love it.
yeah. Cool, man. Well, thank you so much for is it cool if people if they're watching this, if they reach out to you, if they have any questions? And what's the best way for people to get in touch with you? Is it through LinkedIn?
Yeah, just LinkedIn. Feel free to message me. Anyone who, even if you have questions about the program, maybe you're on the fence, happy to talk to you about that.
Cool. All right, man. Well, yeah, once again, I want to acknowledge you for your grace, your vulnerability, your transparency, and just the ease and the freedom and ease you bring to just life. I mean, like you said, it's clear that you're actively applying many of the lessons and you have a thirst for knowledge and just a very open mind, right? Just open to new ideas and humility as well, right? For someone that has achieved a lot of the things you have, you wouldn't be able to tell, right? It's like to your point, yeah, the humility attracts people, right? They feel open up with you and just open they can be candid with you so I appreciate the your contributions to the community and yeah just can't wait to see what you create and all how many more lives you continue to impact through um just sharing and just being you ultimately.
Absolutely, man. I appreciate all of that. Keep doing what you're doing. Keep spreading the good word of everything that you're learning about, and maybe I'll have to crash one of those meetups in New York soon.
Christy's actually flying down from Boston just to attend. I'm like that's dedication.
Yeah, you know what? Maybe I will.
Cool, man. Thanks to everyone who's tuning in. Yeah, we'll do a lot more of these member interviews. Like if you're interested, definitely reach out to either one of us. And thanks for spending time to check this out. Time is the most valuable and precious thing you could do. So, oh, Jonathan said, awesome stuff, Cole. Do you know Jonathan Scholl? Who's
Yeah. Shout out John Scholl.
cool, man. Thanks for tuning in, John. Appreciate you.